this evening is Nancy White. She's a tireless advocate and activist for the cause of energy independence in Texas and the security of our electric grid. Her efforts have made numerous headlines in local, state, national, and international media. Nancy also has her own TV show. It's called Overlooked Critical Matters. Alongside of that, she's also president of LEAF, L-E-A-F, which is Legislative Energy Action Foundation. She speaks frequently concerning the security of our infrastructure, as well as transparency on vulnerabilities within best technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy White.
Hello, everybody. So, I wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of things. No, I don't watch TV, and sometimes I do sleep. I have 2 little kids that I homeschool, and I was activated by the NIMBY effect, not in my backyard, as most people are. And I live in the woods. I prefer to forage and do holistic health, and I learned about this near my land, and I had questions. With the very first one being, what is a battery energy storage system? What is this thing? So, long and short of it is it's a band-aid for solar and wind. Solar and wind is an intermittent technology. I don't care if the sun is shining 24 hours or 15 hours, you're only going to get about 5 hours of energy. It doesn't matter if the wind is blowing 24 hours, you're only going to get 7 hours of energy. I now work with Secure the Texas Grid, which is a subdivision of the Secure the Grid Coalition. It's a national organization. I worked with them. I also had the honor of working on the legislative priority for security of the grid, where I can proudly say we got 11 bills on this issue across the finish line, 18 if you count the enrolled, and we are going to cover some of those bills today, but we're going to go into the nitty-gritty of what is the concern. I'm going to throw a lot at you in a very short time. I'm fully aware that I'm throwing a lot at you. I promise you I will answer your questions, and if I don't get them during the presentation, you can call me whenever and I will answer your questions. But let's get through this, and I promise I'll answer what I can. So, battery energy storage systems are band-aids, but I have this video I want to play for you. Okay, so this is the inside of a battery.
While one unit was offline, it was safe to see inside a typical battery energy storage box.
Each one of the little silver boxes is about 22 small lithium-ion battery cells.
And how many homes could a system like this power when it's on?
A system like this could probably power about 22 homes. It's just for this one unit.
Okay, so if you saw, you had one cell stacked on top of another. So it's 22 lithium cells. Now, to be clear, we're not talking about a little AA battery, which has about 6 grams of lithium. We're not talking about an EV vehicle that has about 16 pounds of lithium. A battery storage site on average has 150,000 pounds of lithium. So if you think it's hard to handle a battery fire, such as a AA, which you can't take on an airplane, or an EV vehicle, you have to evacuate the highway to manage and submerge the vehicle, this is a lot different. And I'm going to go into that as well. Chris, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to come up. And I'm going to show you. One of the things that we had was the Good Neighbor Bill. It's one of the ones we did not get through. We actually have the author here, Representative Verdell. And this was based off of Mr. Dyer. So Mr. Dyer, I'm going to let him tell you his story, but I want you to hear what it is like to have a battery storage system as a neighbor.
So this is, make sure you can see that, 7:52 on Friday the 14th, Valentine's Day. Peace and quiet.
Peace and quiet, right? So Mr. Dyer, if you come over, he is a retired Marine. This is his property, and I would love it if you could tell them what it's like living next to a battery.
I don't live next to battery. I'm posted next to 4 of them. First off, if it's okay, this wall back here just touches my heart. See all these veterans up on the wall.
so great that the community honors these guys. So thank you for that. So yeah, so Bess, one thing first on that video, that picture you just showed, the guys yakking about blue batteries and all that. So inside that box is 400 260-pound lithium batteries stacked on top of each other, right? So you multiply that, like for me, I only got to multiply that by 4 because I only got 4 of those boxes next to my house. The only problem is they're 140 feet from my dinner room window, my dinner table, which I don't like, right? When you get into the 60, 80, 200, 300 battery farm, you know, the 40-foot boxes, you multiply that by 400 times 260. Yeah, there's a lot of batteries sitting out there. And when we talk about our phones having a little battery or all these other little components, these little e-bikes with batteries, and you know, if we're not paying attention to them, they could, you know, explode if we're charging too much or whatever. And again, I'm sitting here with 1,600 260-pound lithium batteries right behind the little chair I got connected to my table that my 1-year-old granddaughter sits at when she comes over to my house for dinner. And I'm supposed to be like, oh, good neighbors, right? You heard that noise. So each one of these things has got 4 air conditioners, 2 on one end, 2 on the other, because they have to maintain a certain temperature to keep them all cool so they don't do what they call a thermal runaway, right? And so those things are like, I think it's 62 degrees, 68 degrees is what they got to maintain. So you get all this stuff going on with all these batteries doing their battery stuff. It gets warm in there, so these ACs are on all the time, right? So we get to listen to those, and then the inverters. The inverters are only 113 feet from my dinner room window, right? Good neighbors, that's all right. I don't think they care about our sleep, because we get to listen to this stuff all night long, all day long. When I turn my lawnmower off, I love my lawnmower, because it drowns out. That's so great. So when I turn that off, that's the first thing I hear. As soon as I turn that off, that's all I hear in my backyard. We were big time socialites, used to have barbecues and groups and everything over. We don't have anybody over our house because of that noise. Nighttime, they got the sensor lights on there, so that place used to be bedded down with deer and wildlife all the time, right? And well, there's still grass and trees around there, so the deer still come around. But when those things turn on, the inverters, because the inverters sound like, my wife describes it as a big industrial vacuum cleaner, right, times 4. When those come on at 3 o'clock in the morning, at 10 o'clock at night, whatever time for 2 or 3 hours, well, you know, the deer are bedding down, sleeping and all that stuff, and then boom, these things come on, the deer all hop up, they start running around, all these lights start coming on, and yeah, it looks like, you know, Austin skylight outside our windows from our bedroom. So we had to go get all these darkening curtains to put on, but it doesn't block the noise. So it's not a fun environment, plus the unknown. I don't care. This is what, a year they've been running at my house, or well, yeah, at my house. It's been about a year that they've been on. It was a year that it took them from the beginning to the time they got them up and running with the construction and all that type of stuff. And there's in the year that they've been there, they've upgraded them 3 times because of chips that keep failing inside of them. This particular company, which I don't mind saying because you said this is live streaming, Regis Energy out of Houston. If they're going to be able to listen to this, I hope they do. Hey, Nathan. He's the president of the company, by the way. What was my train of thought just went out the window when I said his name?
He's a good neighbor.
Yeah. So I don't know what I was going to say. Sorry. Yeah, the chips. So they've been upgraded 3 times because of these chips failing all the time, right? And I talked to all the guys here the whole time. construction guys, the 6-month tech school graduates who are putting all the stuff in and testing it all because they've got all the knowledge, right? 'Cause this is all new stuff. So we don't have, 26-year engineers and stuff who are working on this stuff put together. We have 19, 20-year-old kids with 6 months degrees that are doing this stuff. And I'm supposed to feel safe with this stuff, right? So this is what, and I say this with all sincerity, this is the type of stuff that, we think about these grids are gonna be good things, or these batteries are gonna be good things. I'm all for storing energy so that we have it when we need it. What I'm not all for is them setting them next to people's property, whether you got livestock, whether you got family, whatever, when they're that close, and that's what this Good Neighbor Act was supposed to do, is push these things out maybe 300 feet, which is still way too close in my opinion, but it's a whole lot further away than 113 feet, right? So, I don't know where this is going in Menard, but I will tell you what, this is how important this is to me. When I got a call the other day to say, hey, can you come down? I'm like, oh man, I've got a hernia surgery scheduled for that day. But I rescheduled it to the 17th so I could be here to share my story with you all. This stuff is important. And if you don't believe me, here's my love. So, but it's critical that we all understand what it is that's coming in. And then you do your homework and you ask your commissioners a lot of questions and ask them a lot. And if you're getting answers, and I don't know if there's any commissioners or city personnel here, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but if you're getting answers that say, my hands are tied, we can't do anything, this is good for the community, be looking for new commissioners. Our mayor moved back to Midland, and we have 2 commissioners that just resigned, and our city administrator who helped get this all work resigned to go work for LCRA because they liked what he did, right? So that's the kind of, we don't need people who aren't looking out for the interest of the community. And the interest of the community is the people, right? It's not, I'm not running for any office, so it's not, can we store up enough electricity to keep 7 houses on for 2 hours during a neighbor storm? Because these 4 batteries, I was told, can store up, they have enough electricity for, I think they said 2,000 houses for 7 hours. So, my life, my wife, my son, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter is worth 7 hours of electricity for 2,000 homes. That's how I figure it out. And that's when people say, like, Nathan says, we want to be good neighbors, we want to be good stewards of the land, and then they don't communicate with us. I'm just trying to ruin your company. I'm trying to give you a bad name. That's not good neighborly way of doing any type of business. So, sir?
Mr. Shire, my name is Dick Menard. I believe everything you said. I think it's enough. I've got a question. I know we're supposed to know that. This is your home, your domicile, you're paying property taxes on that. And your property taxes is damn bent because the value or is your property still appraised at exactly the same value as it was 3 years ago?
That, I'm glad you asked. So this year, our appraisal district called me in and said, hey, it's time to raise your taxes. And I think it was like $37,000 up.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? My property became $37,000 more because none of my realtors could, we've had our house on the market for 3 years by 2 really good, you guys have probably heard of the Lindberghs and Mason real estate guy. So they've got a lot of experience, right? And so my house, but my appraisal district went up 30,000, so I went and protested, and they couldn't lower it what it was from last year, so they brought it right back to what it was, because it's like nobody could understand why they would do that. So, no, it hasn't gone down, but it hasn't gone up. Yes.
Thank you, Chris. Now, there's two things that Chris hinted at that didn't say, so I'm going to add them. So he said impact his business. To be clear, Chris ran a gun range, and due to proximity to the batteries and safety concerns, that is no longer active, even though he is a gunny in the Marines, always will be, Marines are Marines. And the second thing is his grandchild. The reason he's trying to sell his house is because he wants to be closer to his first grandchild and cannot sell his property, as he mentioned. Those to me are important details. Grandchildren and children matter, and also your business should not be impacted. Now, the gentleman who asked that, I do have proof of company or homes who their value of their property has dropped by over $50,000. Even in my county, one of which was $70,000 dropped within proximity of that build. And I also have proof of churches who have lost insurance due to proximity of builds. So we'll get to that in a minute, but first let's go ahead and go into the fires. So lithium iron phosphate batteries, they emit 7 toxic chemicals that require evacuation. The most dangerous being carbon monoxide and hydrogen fluoride, but it's important to note that it goes from this temperature, which is the stasis, so like we said is 68. If it gets above 167 degrees, then it goes into what's called runaway. So you saw that those cells were stacked one on top of the other. What runaway is when this cell catches this cell, catches this cell, catches this cell on fire. And that happens because you have lithium that goes from a stasis temperature to over 3,000 degrees in seconds. And under 120 seconds is completely consumed. So when you have batteries that cannot exceed 167 degrees before they go into what's called runaway, and it takes seconds for one cell to get above 3,000 degrees, and in some cases above 25,000 degrees, it doesn't take long for runaway to occur. And so they do have fire suppression systems, but I will state that the EPRI, which is the Energy Institute, states that 72% of the time, the failure is the equipment within. That's what caused it to fail. So the fire suppression system actually caused a fire in 2021 in Monterey Bay. So everybody knows about Monterey Bay 2025. We'll go over 2021 in a minute, but it was the fire suppression system that caused that failure. And we'll go into that. But the emphasis is these are the reactors, these are the things that you have to evacuate for. It's not optional. These are deadly. You cannot have lithium touch your skin, or you cannot have hydrogen fluoride because it is very deadly. It requires evacuation. Now the companies will tell you the starting evacuation is 1.3 miles, and that can go up to wind trajectory and a few others up to 5 depending on factors. But after that, you have what's called indoor lockdown, which means you have to shut your doors and windows, turn off your AC and heat, do not let your animals outside until they give you an all clear, which may be 24 hours, it may be a couple of weeks, depending on the severity of the situation. So we're not talking 1 or 2 hours of indoor lockdown and evacuation, and to be clear, they evacuate you, they do not evacuate your livestock. And we're gonna get into that as well. But what does that look like? So, our fire department was trained, and they're told about how safe these are, how prepared they are. Your firefighters won't have to worry about anything because these have state-of-the-art technology. So did Fredericktown, Missouri, that went into explosion and had chemical toxins over 3 miles out. State-of-the-art technology, okay? It still happens. Additionally, that was October a year ago. So just at, 14 months now? So it was Halloween Day, actually, 2024. And so in this, the fire department was trained. Our fire chief was literally told his job is to show up, stand outside the gate, and wait for the professionals. That's their training. So who is the professionals? The professionals are your hazmat, which for us is over 90 miles away, okay? So your hazmat has to show up because you see the difference in hazmat suits and firefighter. There's exposed skin in the firefighter suits. And even then, their PPE only covers, if you're lucky, 30 minutes. You're out there for hours to days to weeks. You have to have someone on site at all times. So what has to happen is you have to have show up and go door to door and make sure everybody is out of the area. I want to be clear, it was verified. There are 2 schools within proximity of the building Menard, which means that they are in the evacuation zone at under 1.3 miles. Can you imagine trying to evacuate 2 schools of children safely while still going door to door and making sure every single person is out of their home, if they're on a ventilator or if they're on bed rest, whatever it may be, you have to get them safely out. And they only evacuate you, not your animals. If you have cattle, if you have deer, if you have goats, if you have chickens, they are not evacuated. And additionally, we're going to cover this, but I'll go ahead and give you this. There are cases of animals being impacted. So in Fredericktown, Missouri, there was over 3 miles out of dead fish and wildlife. In Monterey Bay, the sloughs and the animals were impacted, and there was a rancher that spoke of stillbirths in his animals. Now, if you're an animal person and you do ranchers and farms, it's not genetic. Stillbirth is not a genetic issue. It is an environmental issue. What you eat, drink, and breathe. These animals never had prior issues till after these runaways, okay? This is my county. This is Van Zandt County. So it's going to be kind of hard to see in the back, but I want to explain based off of this because I'm seeing a lot of similar information, and this is to show you just how unregulated and how unsafe these are. So the top yellow box, that's the plat of land that the company Tulare is building their battery energy storage systems, okay? The image on the right, the green, are the containers. Notice it nearly takes up the entire property. Now they claim that they're not doing that. That's just we're figuring out what we can fit type thing, but why make it up at all if you're not planning to use it? First question. Additionally, it looks like a little mud puddle right here. That's not mud, and I'll go into that further. But right here, right up the middle, there's a green line. I don't know if y'all can see that very thin green line. That is a federal pipeline. It goes all the way from the coast in Galveston, all the way up to Hammond, Indiana. It carries sour gas, diesel, and jet fuel. Very explosive properties. If you don't know sour gas, very dangerous, okay? There's reasons that these are protected. And so, intense pressure. These are not super deep below the ground. And you can probably correct me, it's like 6 feet at best. Might even be 3, but I think it's 6 feet. Intense heat and pressure can cause issues to these pipelines, okay? And as you can see, they factored in the pipeline because currently the parameters are 25 feet on each side, 50 feet. So 25 feet away, they already have batteries planned that can go above 25,000 degrees. So that water puddle that I talked about, that pond, Cedar Creek Reservoir. For those that don't know what Cedar Creek Lake is, it is a lake out by where I live. And this property is right in the middle of that reservoir. You can see it in the blue here, okay? The runoff from this property goes into that lake. That lake is where Fort Worth gets its water. Tarrant Regional Water District maintains Cedar Creek Lake for their water, providing water to over 1.5, it's actually 1.7 million people, including my area. Additionally, what I didn't cover is underneath that subterranean is the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer. Now, you may have heard in the special session this year in legislation that that was a big deal. They're trying to take the water from there. We are on the precipice where we have over 50,000 acres of mining for lithium right now because of this reservoir. And on top of that, they're trying to build 9 batteries in my county alone. 9 batteries, 7 solar, and 1 wind. By the way, I checked Menard. You have 2 solar and 1 battery planned right now, okay? So I'm going to now play this news clip. This is a series of news clips collected over the last couple of years, and I want you to see what this looks like in the news.
That breaking news, just horrible. A massive lithium battery fire in Surprise, and at least 8 firefighters hurt in an explosion.
We want to get
Yeah, well, Steve and Katie, this is a very inactive scene, and what we know now is that the injured firefighters were transported to several valley hospitals, some of them by ground, some of them by helicopter. I want to step out of the way to give you a look at what we're seeing out here, a very large response. We've seen firefighters and fire agencies from multiple agencies out here on the scene.
This not only affected fire crews who were out there, but people who were nearby in the West Valley going about their normal Friday night when all of a sudden they hear something roar, a loud boom interrupting normal Friday night activities.
Yeah, we just talked to one dad actually. He was at baseball practice with his son.
Now let's get to developing news out of Monterey County. A fire burning one of the world's largest lithium battery storage facilities, and it continues to burn more than 24 hours after it started. Residents near the Moss Landing facility, they're still out of their homes this afternoon.
I mean, the biggest thing we're worried about right now, Aaron, is air quality, and we're getting very few answers.
We don't have a lot of answers, and it's that thick black smoke that you see coming up from this fire over the course of the last 36 hours or so that is so concerning. It is releasing chemicals into the air. That we know. The real concern and what we don't know a lot about is the potential impact on people.
But the concern on the outside is what is being pushed out into the air. That's why you're seeing evacuation orders issued in this area. The fire started after 3 this afternoon, but it really grew in the evening. Around 1,500 people are under those evacuation orders. And then in addition, beyond those evacuation orders, officials as far north as Santa Cruz County are asking people to stay inside and close their doors and windows and to shut off air systems until further notice. A Monterey County supervisor spoke to just how serious the situation is.
Well, there's no way to sugarcoat it. This is, it's just a disaster.
There's no way to sugarcoat it.
Not
This
breaking
is
news,
a disaster. Okay. So, right here, I mentioned Fredericktown, Missouri, on the left, over 3 miles out. I want to state for the record that EPA was at both sites. EPA showed up in Fredericktown, Missouri. They had 21 sensors, I believe it was. And they only released the upwind sensors, not the downwind, and they had 7 to 9 fail. Okay? So they didn't release these sensors right here, where these fish and wildlife were found dead. Additionally, they were in Fredericktown, Missouri. Now, here's what's interesting. There are 3 protected areas in Monterey Bay. To the point that you can't cut down a tree without permission is how protected this area is. Yet, because of that, San Jose University was already teaching its students to consistently test those protected areas as part of their curriculum, meaning that they had a baseline before the fires and after the fires to say confidently that yes, they were impacted and yes, they were damaged. Additionally, I mentioned the animals already, the people were harmed. So on this side where you see the heat sensors, that's where they did the lab testing, where the citizens went out on their own and they tested it because they didn't trust EPA. Reasonably so, because I want to state for the record, and this is verifiable, EPA stated on one hand, air is free and clear, you're good to go, while they openly admit that they did not test anything else. They didn't know what to test for. So while EPA is telling you that it's fine, you can go home, the people were still having symptoms, and hydrogen fluoride and lithium can cause flu-like symptoms, headaches, breathing problems, to name a few, but it can also cause this very painful rash because it cannot touch your skin, which is why your firefighters have to have full hazmat gear. And these numbers over here on the right, obviously, you're not seeing the people in the water, you're seeing the people on the land. Every single number is a person who reported and got tested for symptoms. Every single one. And this was over 18 miles out. There was a woman that I know, Heather, in Prunedale, who I spoke to. Actually, if you want to go on my TV network, I did an interview with her. She'll tell you more about it. She tested positive for lithium poisoning in her blood, and she was 15 miles from this location. Okay? And I mentioned Moss Landing had another incident in 2021. Now, what's interesting is the connection to Moss Landing and my county. So Fluence Energy is actually building the batteries for my county. They also built the batteries for Moss Landing in 2021 that when the sensors, the fire suppression failed and caused it to actually go into runaway. They have a lawsuit against them from that incident in Moss Landing from 2021. Now in 2022, when those batteries were rebuilt, these were nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries. These are different than the lithium iron phosphate, but I say that to say in 2022, that technology was brand new. Less than 3 years later, not quite at 3 years, by 2025, January, it was old technology. The new technology that's safe and good is the lithium iron batteries. Now let's be clear, these are but you're leasing your land for nearly 30. Okay? So right here, there's additional lawsuits held by Fluence, including environmental contamination from Diablo Energy. But what's really interesting is they have two parent companies that came together and created Fluence. One is AES, you may have seen their big 18-wheelers going around. And then the other is, oh my goodness, so it's AES and it's not Snyder, I just blanked on it. They do the medical supplies. Siemens, yes, thank you, yes, Siemens, thank you. I don't know why I was thinking Snyder, Siemens. Siemens actually has a lawsuit against Fluence for faulty equipment use and investor fraud. So their company, their parent company, has a lawsuit against them for investor fraud and faulty equipment use. Now, one of the biggest things I hear is it's private property, they can do what they want. I 100% agree. I live in the middle of the woods, I have my chicken coop, I have my animals, leave me alone. I don't do this because I enjoy it. I never gave a presentation until a year ago. I do this because I care, okay? Let's be clear, we're not talking about a chicken coop. We're not talking about a barn that you can leave, you can dilapidate, you can break down, no problem. We're talking about a commercial build for public need, public use, and public distribution, okay? The only thing private is that NDA lease contract that you sign. That is it. This is for public use. It's a commercial build that requires to be remediated and deconstructed. It cannot be left because it is a toxic build. Meaning that, yes, it is private property, but when you have property values, your insurance, and your safety compromised, and something that has to be cleaned up, well, that's not private. That is now a public issue, especially if you have the potential of becoming what's called a super fund. There's a long list of history of batteries, including Monterey Bay, where they become a super fund. Now, what is a super fund? Like I said, it cannot be left because it will cause an issue. So, typically what we're seeing is that these entities are coming to you to lease your land, and they're going to have you put the land into an LLC as they agree with you to move forward in this project where you both have LLCs, limited liability, okay? And what happens if they decide that they go bankrupt or they're moving? Well, you can't not clean it up, right? It has to be cleaned up. Well, don't worry, if they shut down, you have your money, right? Except for you don't, because the cost to decommission and remediate this is 3 times typically the cost bill. So if it's $1 million build, your starting cost is $3 million out of your pocket. And I guarantee you didn't save all that money they gave you month to month or year to year. So don't worry, if you can't afford it, the county has to step in and clean it up. Well, if they don't have $3 million, don't worry. EPA will do you a favor. They'll clean it up for you. But you will have to pay them back. You will have to pay the state back for them cleaning it up for you. So again, yes, it's private property. Your lease is private property. This is a very public commercial build that requires county resources and county impact and evacuation, to be clear. Now, all of that's very scary. Now I'm going to tell you that that's not even the worst part. So this is a congressional letter from December 2023. It's signed by Marco Rubio and 26 other Congress members. This is where Duke Energy on Lake Lejeune Military Base in Virginia was found to have a battery storage system that was considered to be a national security threat due to a company called Contemporary Emprex Technology Limited Company, okay? So what they found is that cattle, this Chinese highest level of connection to CCP military, was on their military base. If you do not know, Lake Lejeune Military Base is actually where they do preparation for a conflict with Taiwan, which is exactly the issue we're looking at. So they acknowledge that this company is connected to the highest levels of CCP military, Chinese Communist Party. Additionally, our governor here in Texas acknowledges that the People's Republic of China, CCP, want to cause real-world harm to the everyday American. So here it says, protecting critical infrastructure is not just about ensuring the components that the infrastructure are not sourced by foreign adversaries, but also ensuring the people who have access to that infrastructure will not compromise it. Well, then he goes on to Executive Order 49, and in this one he mentions the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act. and he talks about storage and delivery systems, battery storage systems, okay? So in a federal hearing, and we'll get back to, actually let's just focus on Lone Star. So one of the things we can proudly say that we got across the finish line during the legislative priority is they amended the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act. They amended it because initially it only said that you could not have owners from China, Iran, Russia, or North Korea. Well, now it says you cannot have components or equipment from there, which is what went into effect September 1st. This is significant because 90% of batteries have the battery cell from cattle, and I can show you that in just a moment. But in this, it says the investigating agency is the Texas Attorney General, and if it crosses into criminal, it goes to the Department of Defense, Department of War. I've heard it both ways. I'm not sure if it's official that it's changed, but Department of War. And incidentally, cattle is on the Department of Defense's national security list as of January for civil military fusion strategy, meaning that they will use our things to harm us. They will cause. Yes? Yeah?
So real quick, I've only got 4 of those batteries next to my house, right? So it's not a major national security issue if China owns them. I've got a video of one of the techs. It's comical, but it's still pretty scary, sorry. I've got a video of one of the techs working on the batteries, talking to a computer, actually getting yelled at by a computer, of a guy who's in China, mad at him for calling him before 2 o'clock in the afternoon because they're sleeping, right? Who is supposed to be monitoring these 4 batteries next to my house, and these techs don't know what they're doing, so they're talking to this guy in China that's responsible for these batteries, right? So when she's saying this about China and all that stuff, it is real. Now, I don't know whether they're affiliated with this military company or not, but it is real. China is deeply involved with these batteries. All the components that are inside of this come from China. Regis Energy, who built mine, one of the contractors that built the facility there, told me Regis is notorious for buying the cheapest Chinese parts to put inside their batteries. And they are aware of what's going on in those things. They know how to turn them on and off. Beijing or wherever they're at, they can flip a switch and turn those batteries off.
Thank you, Chris. And for those that didn't hear, so he actually has a video recording of the technicians on that battery build near his home saying that they use cheap Chinese equipment and actually seeing them be yelled at by someone from China, meaning that he has seen it himself in person and has recordings of this happening, which is significant. Now, how does the Lone Star Law prevent this from happening? Because you would think that we have a law, it doesn't exist, it shouldn't be allowed. Well, basically what happens is the Lone Star Law, they ask the company, do you have any equipment or owners that violate the Lone Star Law? And they say yes or no. And then if they say yes, okay, how are you ensuring that it's only being accessed for warranty or maintenance and not outside of that? And then they provide what's called an attestation. And that tells you how it's done. And then it's the honor system. If they say it's fine, it's fine. Nobody verifies right now. Okay? I'm actually in email conversations with legal counsel for ERCOT on this issue. Right here, ERCOT actually submitted to the Public Utility Commission of Texas that they are missing more than 500 of those attestations presently in Texas. On theirs, LCRA is separate, ERCOT has their own. So on ERCOT alone, they're missing more than 500. This is currently an investigation by the Public Utility Commission of Texas. Additionally, here's your proof from Van Zandt County. This highlighted section in red, kind of hard to see. That is your battery cell being from cattle, that company. So in a hearing, and actually, I'm going to tell you, if you want to be scared, you really want to be afraid, reality is scarier than any movie you'll ever watch. I recommend watching this webinar. I know a lot, and this still terrified me. This had CIA operatives and had other experts in their field, and they will explain to you that the only reason China would be within our critical infrastructure, they don't want your data, they don't want your money, they don't want to watch you. The only reason they would be in critical infrastructure like this is to cause real world harm. What is real world harm? They want you dead or they want you controlled. That is what it is. To be clear, when people say China's in everything, they are not an ally. They are allies with Russia, they are allies with Iran, they are not allies of America, to be clear. Matter of fact, there was a hearing in Washington, D.C., Tuesday of this week. Go watch it, it's in Energy and Commerce. It started roughly 9:30 a.m. Central, 10:30 Eastern. And they acknowledge across the board, every single organization, that there is a real threat from China, all across the board. This will also give you great information. And additionally, in March of this year, there's an organization called the Select Committee on CCP. They were created by Washington, D.C. to investigate certain parameters. This individual is Dr. Emma Stewart. She's from Idaho National Lab. There's a lot more at stake within our grid, including the transformers. They were the ones that actually tested the transformers to see how vulnerable they were to attack, and 90 seconds completely consumed. Super fast, okay? She's the one that actually acknowledges that 70% of solar and 90% of batteries have vulnerable equipment from the CCP. Have at least one critical component that is vulnerable from the CCP. And so, what's interesting is in this hearing, they actually asked a gentleman, Patrick, from Homeland Security. They said, what does it look like if China attacks us? Well, what you're going to see is it in two parts. The first thing they're going to do is attack our telecoms and internet. They're going to do that so that it's harder for our military and our government to communicate to figure out where the point of theater or point of conflict actually is. The second is they're going to take out our critical infrastructure to cause mass chaos within. Because we're not talking about it going down like Winter Storm Uri for 3 to 5 days. We're talking 6 months if you're lucky, and if it is them doing it, we probably will be back in the pre-industrial era indefinitely. No time moving forward soon. So if you don't know how to cook, clean, forage, and hunt, and clean your own meat, you're going to be in a dire straits. In the first 10 days, you're going to have more than 10 million people dead because they don't know how to clean their water. They don't know how to get their food, and they're going to die of dehydration. Again, documented. This is not me making this up. These are from the experts. They say this is real case, real world scenario, okay? But they do that so that while we are struggling, we are dying, our government and military have to focus on us. They can't focus on Taiwan, which effectively, temporarily takes us out of a kinetic warfare, which is where we thrive, okay? So why? For those that don't know, a little history lesson, why Taiwan? Well, to be clear, Taiwan is part of the country of China, just like Cuba is part of the country of the United States. Way back when, you had the nationalists versus the communists, okay? America, naturally, sided with the nationalists, not the communists. Well, the leader of that organization began to lose and fled to Taiwan. Well, America, when they started being pursued by the communists, America got in the middle and said, nope, you're not going to pursue here. And we started to defend Taiwan. What is the equivalent of that? Well, say Florida decides that they want to be a communist state, and America says, no, you're not. Well, then they flee to Cuba, and China gets in the middle and says, you will not pursue. China just got in the middle of our civil war. That's what we did. But Taiwan was smart. If anybody likes the Sean Ryan show, he actually interviewed the leader of Taiwan, where they go over the microprocessors. They have the smallest in the world. We want those. We protect Taiwan because of those. And she actually says in that interview with Sean Ryan that if China gets a hold of this, it's the end of the world as we know it. Okay? So that's something to consider. Oh, and for the record, Xi Jinping, the leader of Taiwan, or China, says that he will be taking back Taiwan by 2027. 2027 is significant because it's also the 100th year anniversary of the Communist Party. And if you know China and their traditions, that matters. Okay? I know. And another thing I keep hearing is Senate Bill 17 stopped China from owning anything. That's not true. This is in Dallas, Texas. So it's actually Dallas County in Mesquite, Texas. This is a battery manufacturing plant called Lithium, who, by the way, is on the National Security Watch list as well, who hires and employs engineers from cattle to build their batteries that are shipped from Beijing to here. But they're made in America, right? Because they're made in Dallas County. It's IKEA style. They're saying it's made in America, but they're shipping all the parts and the engineers from China to here. And this is still in Dallas County right now, with 2 companies on our national security watch list. How is that possible if they're out? How is this allowed if they're an enemy? All very great questions. First thing we're gonna do, I knew I threw a lot of doom and gloom at you. I know I did. There are a lot of things moving. One of the things I did not add in here that is actually as of Monday of this week is the Texas Attorney General put out a press release in reference to investigating CCP or cattle in our grid. Okay, that is based off of Van Zandt County. I submitted the information and the evidence. He is moving forward in that investigation. The other bill that we got across the finish line is Senate Bill 75. Senate Bill 75 is to investigate the security of critical infrastructure. So the idea and the hope is that under the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act, we open the door to concern. We have to show them that it is possible that cattle can do this outside of maintenance and warranty. I already have a cybersecurity infrastructure friend that is working on that right now. Additionally, we were hoping that once that information's there, it will swing the door wide open to investigate every single battery build in Texas as it stands, because Senate Bill 75 allows for investigation into the national security threats of critical infrastructure, which is the grid. There are 1,200 bills currently planned for Texas alone. These are not allowed on military bases. And one of the questions I actually asked the legal counsel of ERCOT is, if the Department of Defense, the highest level of our military, says that they are a national security threat, they are not allowed on military bases, why would we allow them in our critical infrastructure? Why would we not listen to the fact that they are a direct threat? Now, there are a few things you can do to get this information. So one of the first things you can do, and you can actually near you, this actually applies. So Kerr, Kendall, and Gillespie County have what's called a 391 Sub-Regional Planning Commission. You can actually go to their website, they have it up, you can see all of their documents. What this does is it allows state and local government agencies, like city council, counties, soil and water conservation districts to form this commission to investigate and ask questions to state and federal agencies, such as EPA. Is this really the right location? Such as Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Is this really the right location? In reference to, I would actually even go to the Department of Defense, their federal agency, and ask them, are you sure there's nothing compromising in this? But it allows you to go to the Public Utility Commission of Texas, LCRA, and ask questions. It gives you a seat at that table. That's one option. You can join in with it, see if you can get into that. The more we have, the better it is, or you can form your own with city and county. These are options. What's not optional is the fire standards and codes. These are state law. Now, if you have a fire marshal, your fire marshal is supposed to be enforcing these state laws. If you do not have a fire marshal, the authority having jurisdiction is your commissioner court. Now, I want to be very clear. Your commissioner court it's not optional of whether or not you can enforce state law. It is the law of the state. Meaning that you, who they serve and swear an oath to serve, can ask them, did you verify that they are following these state codes and standards? If they cannot provide you that evidence, I'm going to say this because I'm seeing this all across the state. If they cannot show you where they are verifying, but they are allowing a project to move forward because your school district might be getting money, your county might be getting X amount of property taxes, or your fire department might be getting a new truck, to be clear, that is called quid pro quo. That is not necessarily cash in hand, but that is a bribe. If the thing that it takes for you to compromise the safety of your citizens is for your property taxes to go up, for your fire department to get X, or for your school to get X, that's quid pro quo. If you're not verifying citizen safety, which is state law, that's a problem. Now, I want to be clear, this has been very successful. My county requested evidence from the build in my county in December. Provide evidence you're meeting the state laws. No, they provided some evidence, not all. Repeat that for January, February, and March. On April 8th, our county passed a resolution saying that under no circumstances are any April 8th. It has now currently been extended to December 12th, I believe, and I can tell you at 99% certain, no, 100% certainty they will be extending that again. This company has maintained this entire time that they are meeting these standards and codes on media, on the news stations. They have maintained that they were going active this month, every step of the way. But they are no closer now than they were in April when we put the restraining order against them to going active, because they have still not provided the information to my fire marshal. They are still not allowed in our county, and now the Texas Attorney General is also investigating them. Meanwhile, on the ERCOT interconnection system, they're saying they're going to go active in March. No, they're not. No, they're not. Because we enforced standards and codes under the fire protection, as is Texas law. The state fire marshal has adopted these codes. Based off of size, you either defaulted to the ones they have, or you have ones that are already here. Now, to be clear, you need to find out which ones you have and enforce those. In certain areas, depending on population size, you can adopt new codes, more of them, okay? These are automatically available to you. Just enforce them. So one of the things I always say is half the battle is knowing, the other half is what you can do about it. So you can hold your fire marshals and your commissioners accountable, and if you don't fire marshal, your judge and commissioners accountable, because their job, they swore an oath to protect you and to serve you. Question is, are you? Show me your evidence. And I want to be clear, another thing that I'm seeing, and I actually find this one very concerning, is the amount of NDAs county officials are signing. They swore an oath to protect and serve you. If they sign a legal document that prevents you from being able to see it, they're not serving you very well at that point. They're hiding things from you. A non-disclosure agreement where their job is to involve you, we the people that they serve, to serve the will of the people as they're hiding things from you, that is a conflict. They are not serving you if they are hiding things from you, okay? To be clear. The next thing you can do, and this is the biggest, and I stand on this every day, talk to people. We've gotten so uncomfortable talking to someone at the grocery store, talking to our neighbor, just walking up to a stranger at the park. It's so scary these days. But that's how we got in the mess that we're in this country, is we stopped talking to one another because it was too scary. So get comfortable in the uncomfortable, because we have to start working together. We have to unite to protect our country. And this is not, to be clear, this is not the boogeyman. This isn't a conspiracy. To be clear, our governor of Texas, the Texas Attorney General, the federal Congress, and the president do not operate in boogeyman. If it's scary, that's because it is scary. It's a real life threat to our way of life. That is terrifying. It is not me trying to instill fear, it's just sometimes the truth is just scary, okay? We don't have to like it. It's scary to talk to our neighbors. Imagine knowing that we have a threat from an enemy that wants to kill us. And if you only knew the depth of what the military knows, you would know just how scary that truly is. So I say, talk to them. Tell them, do you know about this battery bill coming in? It's scary. Like, I can't believe China's in the way they are. Talk to the people at church. I don't know. I just feel like we gotta do something. Did you even know about this? Talk to people. That's the first and biggest thing you can do. So, in my defense, I did say I was going to throw a lot at you in a very short time. So with that, I'm gonna open to questions. Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
Hi, you said a lot.
I did.
If I heard you correctly, China makes the components for the batteries. Are they inserting devices in there that they can remotely set them on fire, destroy them, or disable them? What's going on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Okay, so it's the battery cell itself. So the battery cell, to be clear, you take the battery cell out, it does not operate. You put the battery cell in, it communicates temperature and charge status. It communicates temperature and charge status. Now, yes, the only thing they would have to do to cause it to go into runaway is cause the system to cycle, which means that it would cause it to overheat, which is entirely easy and plausible to do. Matter of fact, this happened in 2006. If you haven't heard of the Aurora cyber attack, look it up. Most people, when they think cyber, they think IT, zeros and ones. OT, the operational equipment, is also susceptible to this. There's an Aurora cyber attack that this has happened. There's even an organization on the FBI watch list called have LCRA here if I'm correct. So say LCRA is shut down due to, I kind of feel like I need to explain how the grid operates, but I'll get to that in a minute. But say that the grid is shut down because China attacks and it causes a system glitch, whatever. If the system fully shuts down at 6 months minimum, right? Well, what happens to all those batteries on LCRA grid? Well, those temperature controls that Mr. Dyer mentioned, they're not working anymore. They're gone. Meaning that everything that is not being kept at a stasis temperature is now susceptible to runaway. Now, Panhandle can get pretty hot, so can it over here. It's Texas. We get hot sometimes. It doesn't take long for an inside of a metal container that's 1/8 of an inch thick filled with lithium to overheat. So if you remove all cooling temperatures, yes, you have basically hundreds of bombs within that grid parameter, unless they can keep it from cycling. Now, somebody brought up Spain recently. Spain is actually proof of what happens, the Iberian blackout. My team works with this. So it was discussed that what happens when that goes down? Well, those still have a charge. The batteries still have a charge at that point, meaning that they're now cycling because they have nothing to send out and it's locked in. So that battery is still technically operating and starting to cycle, but if it stays too long, can go into runaway. So yes, power matters at keeping it at a stasis temperature and keeping it from going into runaway. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So he mentioned about listening to the noise that's near his house. I wrote what the good neighbor bill is that we talked about. It has a proximity of 500 yards. I got a call from a guy in Hudson County 2 nights ago, and it's driving him crazy. He said that commissioners and all that took him out, wasn't helping with it. Anyways, he's 400 yards from a battery storage facility, and still meters at something like 75 decibels. I had to look that up, and he said it was equivalent to about the sound of a vacuum cleaner. So even 400 yards is still too close to your house if you don't want to have to hear those. His wife, I could hear her in the background, and she wasn't happy either. And she's saying it's a constant nuisance in their life because they have to hear those things all the time. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. And for the record, okay, so we're gonna give an example here. And here's a real thing, and actually I thought it was concerning about your hernia because of this. So sound matters. Our brain receives sound without even us realizing it. So dog whistles. The dogs can hear it, but we can't, but it is definitely making a noise. Okay. Your brain still receives ongoing signals, whether you know it or not. So you may have eventually tuned out that vacuum cleaning sound, but your brain hasn't. An ongoing sound, even if you can't hear it consistently, is constantly affecting your brain waves. It has caused tinnitus, it has caused cancer, it can cause a lot of health issues because your brain is constantly stressed, whether you realize it or not. It can actually cause depression, it can cause psychosis. There are multiple studies that show that ongoing sounds can impact you. This is by the National Institute of Health. You can find them on there. These are all available documents. Matter of fact, I actually wrote a white paper on this, and it doesn't matter if it's at 500 feet for a sound or not, because you still have an evacuation zone of 1.3 miles, meaning that under no circumstances should it be under 5,300 feet, period. And even then, my fire marshal will tell you that you're being too nice. It needs to go to 3 miles, minimum. Minimum. And even then, it's still a danger. Next question? Anybody? Yes.
We got two anonymous questions back here.
Okay, you can read those. I'll answer these while you do that. Yes, ma'am.
So the obvious benefactors are the developer, who's typically a foreign company, but they're organized in the United States, and then the landowner who has decided to do this. How much of this project do you know, on average, is financed by taxpayer dollars?
Over 53% minimum. So the question is, how much is funded by taxpayers? Over 53%. So there's a few things that happen. So one is, okay, I'm so glad you asked that. So we're gonna start with the Inflation Reduction Act, which did not reduce anything, by the way. And it actually caused us to go up in cost. We've spent millions to billions just out of that one. Additionally, we give subsidies. There was a bill that didn't get through, where apparently we got it passed, or I didn't, the American Energy Works, getting the same revenue as a baseload energy, such as oil, gas, nuclear, and coal. So they're being paid that way. So they're making money that way as well. Well, then we have what's called the Texas Energy Fund, which is also paid out millions from our taxes, state taxes. And then you also have what's called paid purchase agreements. This is where the companies are building them. You saw it mostly during Uri, where you have to pick up the cost of where that went down because you're going to pay back what they had to pay extra to keep your lights on. And actually from there, I'm going to stop and I'm going to explain something. Winter Storm Uri actually proved the failures of wind and solar. Most people don't understand that. They think we need all technology now because Uri. What they don't realize is that Uri actually proved the failure of solar and wind. So let me explain that. I'm going to explain the grid. So you have, I'm going to throw some words at you. E equals mc squared, an object in motion stays in motion, inertia, mass, energy. We've pretty much all heard these words at any given time, not understanding that that's the physics of our grid, okay? So what's happening is you have baseload energy, oil, gas, nuclear, coal. And what I want you to think of what that's like is you and 9 other buddies are standing on the side of a cliff. And y'all work together to push this boulder over the side of this cliff, okay? This huge boulder, you're working together, you push it over. As it's going down this hill, it's building inertia, it's building mass, it's building energy, okay? Now stand on that same cliff, hold a teeny tiny pebble, and throw it over. That's your solar and wind. You have what's called generators that keep it cycling, so think of it like a fan, okay? So they all go into these generators to cycle and keep flowing. So think of it like this. You're swinging back and forth like a child on a swing, and someone grabs one of those chains and it starts to wobble, so the child will jump ship. That's what your generators do. So what happened during Uri was a few failures. So someone over here had the bright idea to turn this part of the grid off, which shut down one of the gas processing plants. Bad idea. If you look at how many coal plants were shut down under the president of that time, you'll understand why that coal plant was not operating the way it should have been. If you still kept those 2 failures and removed all solar and wind from the grid at that time, we would have only had 30-minute rolling blackouts at most. That's it. But what happened is when you removed 2 baseload energy and you only had intermittent, weak technology to do it, it caused the system to wobble, the generators to wobble, and they shut down so that they don't completely implode or fail. Because if that happens, again, 6 months to indefinite, okay? They had to shut it down because of that reason. Meaning that at that point, the failure was the weakness in the system, and every time it hit it, it would cause it. For the record, there are 3 failing generators in the ERCOT grid still. It's $54 million to replace those, and Public Utility Commission of Texas said no, build more batteries. So, what was your question? Okay.
I do remember. Okay, so let's say that they put in the battery grid and we bear with it for 5 to 10 years without blinking the entire county, which it would. Okay, so let's say we live through that. Then when they remove, how much, because they keep talking about tax money, that we're going to get all this money for the county. How much money is that? And then also at the end of this period of time, when this has to be taken away and cleaned up, how usable is that land?
So the question is, how much does it cost, or how much are they gaining in revenue? You know, I've heard anywhere from 20 million to 100 million. That's not going to be accurate, and it's going to depreciate over time, and especially, if I'm remembering correctly, your county is currently working on an abatement. Especially if they give an abatement, you're not getting that. And I will say that there are cases where counties have given abatements for 10, 20 years, and the company goes down before them, and they never see a dime of that revenue, ever. So, that is a trend, actually. So, and then the second question is, can that land be usable again? I was, incidentally, speaking of Peregrine Energy, I was in Harrison, which is near me, and I was in their commissioner court, and I actually listened to Peregrine give a presentation, and he acknowledged in that presentation it would never be ag again. It will never be those are your options to start, but even then, that's best case scenario. And those are clean up the land the best you can, because believe it or not, dandelions really like toxins. Oh, and they make really good medicine. Okay, so the first question, and I think I've already answered it, so you can tell me if you have a secondary. It says, what are the taxes when it's over, and what is the radius on evacuation, and where do we go? Okay, so where do you go? That's a great question. So one of the things that we're requiring from our company that they have not provided is they have to have a site-specific plume study, and that matters because where I sit in Texas and where you sit in Texas are two entirely different things. And if your plume study is coming from New York or France, it has no relevance to your location. Side note, so Larry's from Finland, and we asked him, what do we do with a tornado? He goes, oh, they're bolted down. Cool, you've never seen a tornado. Got it. So with that, we're getting a site-specific plume study because we're in a tornado alley. We want to know what is happening on that land should they build there, which is followed by our site-specific emergency plan, which goes into where do your people go be covered in that. So one of the things you should be getting under your fire standards and codes by the law, site-specific plume study, site-specific emergency plan. If your county isn't sure how they're handling it, you already have a problem. For the record, Fannin County learned this the hard way. I was in their court last week. Fannin County is about to go active. They had an alarm go off for a low battery charge in their location, and the gentleman that was near it heard it, called it in and said, there's an alarm going off. And the operator says, well, what do you want us to do? I don't know, you're supposed to know how to handle this. It's the battery bill, it's toxic. What are you gonna do? And he said, let me figure it out. 10 minutes later, he gets a call back and says, well, we don't know who to send. Send the fire department, send the deputy. I don't know, it's your job to know what you're supposed to do. So then, about 45 minutes later, he gets a call from the deputy. I can't find the entrance to this site, can you show me? That's a problem. Additionally, their fire department is not even certified to do a house fire, let alone a lithium fire, yet they showed up. Okay? So I told you that in seconds, lithium gets above 3,000 degrees, it's already going into runaway, you have to evacuate quickly. You're lucky if your volunteer fire department gets there in 15 minutes. They might have to come from work, they might have to come from out of town, you might have to wait for another county over, a different ESD. You're looking at 15 to 20 minutes if you're lucky to even start evacuation. You're already in inclement danger, period. Yes, ma'am.
What happens to the people that you evacuate, all the citizens that you evacuate? Where are they gonna go and how many can afford to stay at some facility? I mean,
That part of yours,
who can afford to go 20 miles and have to stay in a hotel?
your county has to answer that question. They're responsible for your safety. That right
Are they
there.
gonna pick up the tab for the hotel bill?
That's a great question. It should be in your emergency plan. If they have to figure out where to put you, where are they putting you? If your schools are within the evacuation zone, clearly it's not going to be there. So where are you going to go? That's a great question. That should be in your site-specific emergency plan, don't you think? Where are we taking our people we have to evacuate? Especially the ones that are on medical support, bed rest. How are you going to make sure they have medical help where you are taking them? Or nursing homes, all of this, making sure all the children get out safely and back to their parents. These are all questions that should be answered in your site-specific emergency plan. And all questions you should absolutely be asking your judge and your commissioners under these fire standards and codes. Okay? So, very good question. Commissioner meetings Monday, I believe, at 9 a.m. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, ma'am. Couldn't hear you, I'm sorry. You really don't have to worry about water levels in you. Okay, so let me clarify. You cannot put water on lithium. You cannot. So there's actually a YouTube video out there of Elon Musk putting one of his motors underwater, and you can actually watch that motor cycle and create its own oxygen for 3 months. You cannot put water on lithium. It actually causes it to reactivate like a trip candle. So if it stops and you put water on it, say it's dewy, misty, rainy, it can reactivate. It actually happened twice in Monterey Bay this year. And additionally, when they tried to go active again in July, it went into runaway again. So you cannot put water on it. But here's the thing, and this goes back to those fire standards and codes. or the training. Yeah. All right. So this question is, I might have already answered it. Location of proposed site of drainage towards the San Saba. I think we answered that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give Mr. Nash and let him go ahead and do his presentation, and then we can answer any other questions at that point, and I'll be hanging around after. But I want to make sure Mr. Nash can get out and give his presentation because he has a lot more specific information for you here at Menard. All right. So Mr. Nash, for those that don't know, he's amazing. He went with us to Austin. He helped us with our security of the grid, and he has been very active on this for at least a year. He's done great work, and so Mr. Nash, I would like to go ahead and pass this off to you.
Well, I appreciate y'all having me here. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Nancy. She's awesome. I mean, she's statewide, and I just had to start working with her. And I wouldn't be specifically here if it wasn't for Susan Williamson, because I called her. Oh, I don't know. It's been a while, but I said, Menard doesn't know anything about this battery system. I said, I didn't know. So anyway, she started going around 2 or 3 days. She called me about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days after that. I said, yeah, they know now. So anyway, I just decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and pursue this in this county. And the main thing I'm here today is I want to talk specifically about fire codes, and it's the NFP 855. And also, there's going to be some handouts, I think. Handouts, there we go. This gentleman here, I'm going to be working off the handouts because, so there's about 75 of them, so good job, Susan. Thanks a lot. So, and I am going to be using the handout, so I'm going to be kind of reading it a little bit more than presenting it, because I just put it together this week. And it's going to be tied to really something that I think we need to take action here in this county, and it really, I'm sorry. Well, I won't get any past this first couple of pages. So, I think what we really need to be concerned about at this point is because of where the site is. Okay, so we'll be talking about that towards the end. So what I'm going to be doing is just reviewing the background on Gillespie County, and then also the background on Menard County. Then I'll be talking about specific document requirements that NFPA requires for your county to be able to review and approve, which has been a problem. We've had that problem in Gillespie County. So, and then I want to go through I'm not going to go through all 12 of those document requirements, but I've highlighted in the literature the ones that I really feel have to do with site development and site, deciding where the site is, because this is coming. So I think it's time to be pretty aggressive on that. So anyway, I'm going to go, and I might end up sitting down a little bit because I'm a little shaky. So the background on Gillespie County, we had a Harper Chamber of Commerce from Paragon Energy came in, and a couple of things there. They actually told us on their fire test they had 81 parts per million hydrogen fluoride. So they had already done a test, and also they actually put this on the website that the distance from Harper K-12 school was 0.8 miles. Well, it's actually 0.3 miles. So there was a lot of issues, and I just came out of there just saying, no, there's a problem. I got to get involved. So the I also went to a Kirk County Commissioners Court meeting where the state fire marshal came in and they started explaining the NFP 855. And so the two key things that I got out of there, and I believe Nancy spoke of about having the current the SFMO currently adopts NFPA 1 Fire Code 2021 edition and the 855-2020 edition. And so that's what an unincorporated area of the county, which is here, and it's also Gillespie and Kirk County. So you have to use their codes, unlike larger cities where they can adopt their own fire codes. So that right there told me, I said, well, that's something we can look at because besides the private property rights and everything, the county commissioners have authority, have the jurisdiction to actually look at these drawings, review and approve them. So the other things that have happened since then, we've got Gillespie County has had 2 resolutions, one for Harper, which is where I'm at, and then also for Willis City, which is north of Fredericksburg, and these document requirements are part of that resolution. And the one up in it's actually about 6 miles north, I think, of Fredericksburg on Highway 16. And what they also have is a solar facility. And so anyway, that's the first page. Second page. Okay, so this is what I kind of gathered from Menard County. And I've got a bunch of dates here, like items 1 through 6. They're all on the ERCOT GIS report. That's a monthly report that comes out. There's lots of information there. So I went ahead for Menard County, backed up to the very first dates, just so you understand when this stuff starts happening. The full interconnection study request was done back in 2022. And full interconnection study approved, we don't know yet. That's kind of important right there because that's probably why they haven't progressed too much. There's something that they still haven't been able to solve, I don't know, to proceed. So the other things that's important is on item number 6, the financial security and notice to proceed provided. That's a yes. Okay, so when that means yes, that means they could go. It's just a yes-no statement. And there's only about 3 other scheduled events that go on that GIS report, and the next one's construction. So it's something that, it's moving. So, man.
Does that mean they've already approved this?
Well, there's lots of things that have to happen between, starting getting an interconnection agreement and construction. And it's approval process all the way through with ERCOT. But my point is, if it was a no, they can't proceed to the next step. So there's several steps that they go through. Did I answer your question? Okay.
About that one
Harper is, their next box is construction. Okay, so we're in litigation here. We just had a hearing this week. There is a dismissal hearing, but the judge has to look at the paperwork and make a judgment before Christmas, I believe. And then after that, I think we're going to have an injunction. Something to that effect.
So,
Okay.
so basically in Harper, it is still going to happen.
It's still moving forward, yes.
It's moving forward, but we're slowing them down. I would say that. We've learned a lot of lessons from Van Zandt, and we're doing basically the same types of stuff with fire code.
There's been a lot of, so I'm from Harper, And there's been a lot of things that have happened in Harper for things to be slowed down. They have ran people off the road for simply clearing land in Harper. It has gone, there is people that have their businesses ransacked because of the side that they have chosen. So I just want y'all to know that while y'all are sitting here, that there's a lot that goes deeper than this. Y'all as a town need to band together and rely on each other instead of listening to outsiders. Y'all need to look within and know that y'all can trust the people in y'all's town that have taken care of y'all. That's all I got to say, is because I know people personally that have been ran off the road, their workers. I know people that their businesses have been ransacked. And I know people now that have had to retain lawyers because of all of this. So I'm just saying, that's it. I mean, y'all have to stick together and rely on each other and not let somebody come in and fearmonger you into believing everything. I just want y'all to understand that, because there's a lady that she works in Harper on the fire department, and she said that she's gone through all the training and everything, and that she says that it seems legit, everything. They've gone to all the trainings, they put the best foot forward. You know, I know that there's people out there that are not going to be happy if it happens, but at the end of the day, at least do research beyond what you're just seeing on a platform that is by a certain group of people, okay? You have to look beyond what a group of 5 or 6 people say. That's all I got to say.
How's it working in
I
your
want to
town?
touch on that.
Do what?
How's it working in your town?
He said it. It's still going forward. They're trying to stop it, but it's still going forward. So just keep that in mind. If somebody has all their ducks in a row and whatnot, and it goes forward, let it. That's the way I look at it. But if there's something there that is, they don't have it, you know, like a fire protection plan like you were talking about, if it's not there, then ask questions, yes. But don't turn against each other in the process in such a small town, because that's what's happened where I live or where I grew up. I'm just going to put that out there. Everybody, families that have, I'm talking like families have turned against each other. And it's sad. And you don't want that to happen.
I was just about to say.
And that's why we're here at the meeting, because I wanted to hear the other side.
So she's absolutely right, and I don't know if you know this, but it's already happening here. So there's already been threats, there's already been shady dealings happening in your county. You'd be amazed at the phone calls I get from people in your county already. And honestly, she's absolutely right. You should work together, hold them accountable, don't be belligerent, don't be violent, don't be disrespectful. Hold them accountable while being respectful. So I have not once to date.
Please be respectful. Right now,
Yeah.
there's some really issues with your verbiage online, people. It is not good.
Yeah.
And I agree. If you look up the stuff, there is verbiage under y'all stuff that it is aggressive and it is not right. And you're coming into small communities where they have nothing but each other. And that's how it's always been.
I live in a small community. I 100% understand. I do not have ability to adopt more codes because I live in a small community. Here, I'm gonna
I think most of these issues with the people have come up because we had no warning. And so we're learning here, they've been working on this for 3 years, working out all the kinks, nobody hearing anything about it. Here we are, just learning what it even is, right? So we started asking intelligent people here, smart people here in our town, right? Good people. Started asking the obvious questions. What is this thing? What are we talking about here? It sounds kind of important. And we were the ones who were immediately told, this is BS, tinfoil hats, what a little load of crap. You can't be asking all these questions. Does that sound like an environment that you would trust and put your confidence in? No.
Okay, and I understand that, but as an outsider, I have seen other stuff that y'all have made it to where certain people in this town have no voice anymore, and it's only the voice of those that oppose. That's all I'm saying. Like,
You know what? You are an outsider, and I think we're managing it incredibly impressively. Seeing people in this town come to life to just want to learn, to come out on a cold night and try to learn.
And I think that that's, I think that that's,
And what you're doing in your town is what you're doing in your
okay, and I think that that's great. And the reason that I'm here is because we are looking at moving our children into this school district because it is something that we have researched. And that's just where we want to plant roots and have our family.
So why are you here sharing that?
I'm just letting you know that it's like there's two sides of it. And I think that a lot of,
We already know that.
I know, but I think a lot of people have their blinders on.
Thank you for your observation. Pardon me.
Sorry to interrupt. We get Yvonne carry on.
Okay. No. Well, yeah, I'm okay. Okay, so the others on bottom of page 2, I was just going to summarize some of the stuff that came up in the commission's court meeting. Did most of y'all go to that? Does anybody want to go through that? So you can look through here, and the main thing is I did ask the commissioner's court, about compliance. I asked the gentleman from Res whether they would comply with the NFPA 855 documentation requirements for review and approval by the Menard County Commissioner's Court as the authority having jurisdiction, and he said yes. Okay, so I think maybe that's a positive thing there, and we need to follow through. I would specifically ask for the site layout plan for sure. That'd be the first thing I'd ask for. I'm not going to go through too much of this. I want to go ahead and get started on the document requirements. That's page 3. I'm going to go ahead and sit down. Go backwards. So anyway, the first one is the key one, location and layout diagram, just like I said. This is verbiage straight from the NFPA at 855, so it has to be exact that wording on the resolution. So anyway, that one deal right there, emergency response guidebook, a global standard for hazardous material incidents, specifies a minimum evacuation distance of 500 meters, approximately 1/3 of a mile for lithium-ion battery storage fires. So I actually got this just yesterday. In lithium-ion, it also said if a rail car or trailer is involved in a fire, isolate for 500 meters, 1/3 of a mile in all directions. Also include evacuation, including emergency responders for 500 meters. Okay, well to me, that means that's hazmat. I mean, if you go in there with bunker gear or whatever normal fire departments have, they don't have that gear. So I would think that would be a pretty good criteria there. Is Wes still here? Oh gosh. Oh, anyway, he had that 500-yard criteria in his bill. This is going to add a few more yards to it. I think that's going to be a pretty good basis for his technical basis when he tries to refile that bill. Okay, so all right, on the second item here, lithium-ion batteries are hazardous materials identified as hazardous class 9. And they have a placard, placards of diamond placards you have on these cars and everything. They actually have to have a placard for it, and because it's because of the lithium so the next item is the battery unit is involved in a fire, isolate for so also the second site-specific plot plan showing all the equipment associated with the best facility, specifically the distances between best enclosures. It's all about distances here, because you don't want one enclosure getting consumed and then have one right next to it, kind of domino effect and everything. So that's another good reason why you need to look at these drawings to verify it's got proper distancing. You really want your worst case to be just one full enclosure fire. The second item is the details on hourly fire-resistant rated assemblies. Now, I think that a lot of people think about fire-resistant, that's the fireproofing, something like your fireplace. But a lot of people say fire-rated assemblies, they think that's fireproofing. It's not. It only lasts for 1 or 2 hours. And if you with these racks going up and everything, if you have a 1 and 2 hour rating that goes from one rack to the next, just like Nancy was saying, it just dominoes through the whole enclosure. Item 3, quantities and types of ESS units. Now, the GIS report for Menard desk back in October, they had 254 megawatts, and then they changed it to 203 megawatts in the month before. I mean, September was 254 and October was 203. So that might be one of the issues that they're still working through the design. I'm not really sure what that's all about. So that's something that we should also try to find out what's going on there. The fourth is manufacturer specifications, ratings, and listings of ESS. A 2024 report, as I guess you covered that, about the 70%. So anyway, there's a lot of problems with these controls. And the vast majority of the failures are because the controls or the balance of the equipment, and it's not so much the batteries, it's why the battery failed in the first place. Description of energy storage management systems and their operation. Now this is another piece of information from the EPRI, a white paper, having to talk about the controls and balance of systems. The location and content, we'll skip that one. Okay, so on number 9, large-scale fire test data. Okay, the NFP 855 did not have a consensus on the large-scale fire test data. So that's still kind of up in the air as far as 855. But people right now are actually sending their containers to China, and they set them up to like what the site's going to be, the distancing and all that. They'll set the whole container on fire, and they'll try to verify whether it catches the next one on fire. And that's kind of what's going on the last couple of years to address that large-scale fire testing. So that's very important to know what's going on there. That's another important document that you need to understand, because you don't want multi-container fires. Last but not is a hazard mitigation analysis. The best course of action is still to design the best container system, assuming the worst case runaway will occur and that all of the cells, modules, racks within the container will be involved. So that to me is your design basis for a worst case system, and that's what you be concerned about the flume on that. Now there's been 3 in that GIS report. The last 3 months, August, September, and October. These are 3 different states in the United States. The one in August was 4 megapacks. Those are the enclosures. The one in Boulder in September was 2 Tesla megapacks, and then the one in Peoria, Arizona was 1. But get this, the system age was 4 years, 3.8 years, 4 years. they talk about how things have improved, and I'd say there are some improvements, but you don't know what kind of enclosures you have. And you might have something that's only going to last 3 or 4 years anyway. The next step is 44, and this is kind of like when we're talking about how many cells are in an enclosure. But I was calculating that there's like 2,500 battery cells in an enclosure. And every one of those cells has electrolyte in it. And the electrolyte is where the energy is stored. And that's where you get your hydrogen fluoride. And so there's these enclosures are getting denser and denser, like they're going from 80,000 pounds to 80,000 pounds to 90,000 pounds. And all that gets converted into, HF. And so anyway, the NiOSH, immediately dangerous to life and health. It's a level of HF is 30 parts per million.
How many acres for one cell?
How many what, man?
How many acres for one cell?
Well, you talk about one enclosure?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'd say probably they're saying on this one it's going to be like 10 acres, and they've got a range on how many containers they're going to have. I think it was 90 to 120 or something like that.
And that's what you're calling one cell?
One cell is just a small piece of a module. You have like say 50 cells in a module. That's like a drawer that comes out, and then you have them stacked up as a rack. There's typically maybe 8.
So the container that contains those cells will take that.
What's the
So how many containers are we talking about putting up there in the?
In Menard? Yeah.
How many containers?
Well, they gave us a range in the commissioners meeting. I think it was probably about the average of the range was about 100.
So we're talking 100 containers.
Yeah, something like that. What's the size of the container? Well, it's like an ISO container. It's like just like the containers you see that get hauled around. But all these containers are built differently by all these companies. So that's why you really need to get into the details on those. So, yes, ma'am.
How long for a 100 container facility? How long is it going to be under construction? Before count, how long does it take to get it?
When they actually start construction, they'll usually finish within a year, about 12 months. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I don't even know if we have a fire marshal right now in Menard.
No, we don't.
We do not. Then who would be the next one in charge to learn all this stuff?
Well, the way that works is it's the county commissioner's responsibility. The fire marshal, if you had one, works under them, and so the duties are assigned by the commissioners. And what typically happens is they will either contract engineering services to review these drawings. I propose that with all the oil and gas people that are retired, things like nature, I've already started looking at some of these drawings on another project, and you can get a lot of volunteers to look at that, but that has to funnel through to the county commissioners and then to the best entity.
Who pinpointed Menard or who picked Menard to begin with?
I really don't have, I think what they probably do is they look at what I call a load study of the whole grid, and they try to figure out where the weaknesses are, things of that nature. It's what well, yeah, all this stuff is kind of like when Uri hit, we just needed the poles to stay up. That was our problem. We didn't have any problem with the substation or anything else or transmission lines. Our poles just fell down. That's the main thing that I had a problem with. Okay, so this gets to decision rights. The decision rights are the private property owner, but also the commissioner court in a way has decision rights too. If they review and approve, you know, if they don't like the site location, they have a say in it. But as far as the people voting, no.
And they also have the right to say whether we give them abatement on taxes, and that's what I understand the company's looking for.
Yes, they discussed that in the commissioners meeting. Were you there? Okay, I would suggest that you go into one of these Facebook pages. I think, and you can look it through that. There was a discussion about abatement and that sort of thing. So.
The commissioner meeting is Monday at 9 o'clock.
And could I interject on something? I'll get you, ma'am. So anyway, I was looking at the agenda for that meeting, and I didn't see it on the agenda. So I don't know how strict y'all are about, sticking to agenda items. That might be something you want to follow up with. Well, I think that there's probably always an opportunity for you to make public comment, even if there wasn't an agenda item. That's how it normally works. Okay, ma'am, back here.
I've been asked several times if there's a tie, should we have two commissioners for it or two commissioners against it? How is that solved? But is the judge not stepping in for Mr. Wright because he's bowed out? That's what I've been asked.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Because one's going to be reclused, and then you only have 4.
The judge will be one of the 4 at that point.
Right.
How do we break a tie?
Oh, anybody know? I think it doesn't pass. Okay, so it has to have. It doesn't pass if it's a tie. Is that right?
Your county attorney or your attorney that you have on hand is going to have to step in at that point, and they're going to have to figure out mediation at that point. What to make a middle ground of. So, well, then that could be a conflict too. But more than likely, you're going to have legal counsel step in because it's a big county decision. It can't just fall flat if you don't have full vote and you have to do an interim. You're going to have to figure out who's your swing vote. More than likely, you're going to have to mediate.
Okay, so I want to continue on with the middle there. So let's see what I did. All right, so I did look up a laboratory test that they did on lithium-ion batteries. They had a few cells in there. I wouldn't say it was a full module. It didn't look like it. So what they do is they set it on fire, and then within about 2 minutes, you start getting a spike. Okay, what that spike is probably mainly hydrogen, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and then only about the 2 more minutes is when it gets a bigger spike, and that's when the HF starts releasing. So this particular study measured just the concentration of HF, 145 parts per billion, and that was set up on 100% state of charge. That's pretty good methodology because when you overcharge these batteries, that's when they start to have problems and fail. So that would be a good scenario. And so if you recall back to what the Harper fire test was, it was 81 parts per million. So this isn't just a house fire, okay? This is all this electrolytes boiling, and it's all this energy density. It's not like your house where you have a short circuit, you're going to have a circuit breaker go off. It's going to get consumed, it's going to continue to go through the whole enclosure. So it's just got a different toxicity. My issue is all about toxicity. So I would like to start talking about the actual site. And so I'm going to go to, let's see. Yep, that's good. Okay, this is from Menard's appraisal district. It's a scale drawing. It's a pretty large drawing. This is the San Saba. This is your airport. And over here, it's your substation. And that's a baseball field, I believe. And so that's kind of giving you a layout of the area that's being proposed. If you want to go to the next one, please. Okay, this was a slide that was presented at the Commissioners Court meeting. And it's a hydrology type map. So this is the 100-year floodplain area. And so a lot of this is during a flood. And this is where the proposed location of that. And it's west of the post office, and it's west of the substation. This is a wind map. So you can see that most of this area is at prevailing winds from the south. And so if you were to look at Harper, where the baseball park is, and with that prevailing wind, that's where our K through 12 school is, where your ballpark is. So that's the kind of situation we have on Harper. The other thing about Harper is where this right here, that's kind of like where the Pertinalis hits the same property, except it goes into that property. And I think they actually had to move their whole plot plan to get out of floodplain. Okay, so go ahead and go to the next one. So I laid that out. Is Wes still here? Did he leave? Okay, all right, thank you. So anyway, this is the 500 meter, right here, this circle right here. And so they decided that they were going to put a 1,000-foot buffer. Okay. And so they did that, and they didn't get the old any of the properties. Right here. Would you guess what that line is right there? Anybody know? Anybody? No, right here. This line right here. Right here. That's the city property line. That's the city limits. That is the city limits. Okay, so what do you think that means? I mean, they couldn't get any closer to city limits. And it's like, was that their, I mean, to me, when they went in and they started looking at the filtering of the site location and everything, they already had a solution. They're going to put as closest to the substation without crossing the city limits. And the reason that they don't want to cross the city limits is because normally a city has codes, zone codes. Now I don't know if Menard has any of that stuff, but they still didn't want to touch the city because that's another thing. Whatever. So anyway, what I believe that they're going to do with it, and this is a substation right here. I think what they're going to do is just tie into a dead end on the substation straight in, like standalone. But those are all 138 kV lines. And the same transmission line coming off that battery is a 138 kV line. They all have the same line losses. So my question would be, why would you worry about the transmission line? You can move it completely away from the substation to a safer place. And it would look just like this line right here. It could be coming from way over here or go across here and get completely away from your city. And it still serve the same purpose. Now, the other thing, in the ERCOT report, they have all the BESs that are tied to standalone, but then not all of them are. Out of all the BESs, 1/3 of them are taps. They tap in between like a 138 kV line somewhere between two substations. Did they look at those kind of options? I don't know. That would be a good question for them. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, anyway, 547 yards, DOT design basis. And if we had that bill this past session that had something like this, they wouldn't put it here. Okay. Anyway, I think this is what we should do next session. That's why I wanted to ask about this. All right. So, Amy, you want to talk? Oh, you have a question? Is it for me?
I do want to iterate what he just said. Yes, ma'am. Do you want to go ahead now? You want to ask him? Go ahead.
Well, just on the south side of 190, that would be the riverside across from this. I personally know the gentleman that owns the two pastures in front of the Presidio de San Saba. He has been approached multiple times to lease his property for these best sites. That is south of 190. That is 650 feet from our river. How are they approaching all these landowners so quickly in our area in the past few months? That's sacred land for our county. That's not right. The man stood up in the meeting at Commissioner's Court and said they are very aware of where they put them. They're very conscious of where they put them. And that's not happening. They're approaching people way too close to the river.
I agree. But one thing I wanted to follow up from the Commissioner's Court meeting, there was discussion about House Bill 3809. They put it up on the bulletin board or whatever, 2809. That is set up for 15 years on leased property only. Okay, so you're not going to get financial assurance on leased property till 15 years after it starts operation. The 10-year thing that I couldn't remember, all that was to put in an estimate. It didn't have any financial responsibility. So if you're going to have a BEST that's having 4-year failures, you're going to get stuck with that because they don't have any, by that bill, they're not required to do financial assurance. So the life of the project, they say 20 years, I don't buy it.
So I want to reiterate that, yes, this absolutely needs to be a legislative priority. This needs to be something we readdress. We did great. We got some things through, but we are far from done. With that said, if you are a member of the RPT or any party and you want a resolution on how to move forward on this, I have a resolution for you. And we are trying to get for county conventions this as a priority there, so it can make it to state convention and be a priority. There are things we can help with this. There are multiple resolutions and we do want to help. Now the final question was, I believe yours about the fire marshal. I want to clear something up. The way the law is written is that the authority having jurisdiction may hire a fire marshal to do the role, meaning that they don't have to have a fire marshal, but they do have to do the law. So the authority having jurisdiction that can hire the fire marshal is your commissioner court, which I know he answered, but I want to state that because just because you don't have one doesn't mean it doesn't have to be enforced. Now, we threw a lot of information at you tonight, I know. Thank you for staying and finishing it out. We're going to be here for a bit. We got to clean up and stuff. Feel free to ask us questions. And personally, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for wanting to know. Thank you for asking the questions. And I appreciate each of you, and thank you for having us here tonight.
I did want to let you know that handout But a lot of those are hyperlinks, and so I would like to be able to send, it's a Word document, so for me, I just click it, that kind of deal. But I'd like to get it in y'all's hands, but I don't want everybody's personal information. I'd